Well, it's certainly been a cold first half to the week across the western portion of Europe, with the exceptions of Iberia. This is the 2 minute temperature anomaly for just the last 48 hours, and you can see here firmly below average across the bulk of the UK, with the exceptions of the southwest as well as southwestern Ireland. The core of the cold, of course, has been focused over Scandinavia, where we've had all like record breaking late season temperatures. In fact, the coldest temperature of the entire winter was achieved in parts of Finland in the last few days here. So, big story is the cold across Scandinavia. We're kind of on the outer perimeter of that very cold conditions here in the UK, and we are going to see a warm up in the next few days. We could see temperatures rise to as high as 18 Celsius by Thursday. But thanks for clicking on to the late edition of Vogan's European Outlook for the Tuesday, the 28th of March edition. You can see here that this is helping the temperature anomaly probably average right or around the average for the month of March. Like I said before, maybe slightly below average, like minus 0 point whatever. So I'm curious to see what the temperature anomaly will come in at for the month of March. And I suppose I'm obsessed about it because I did say that it would be a cold March, so I'm kind of eager to see where this month winds up. Cold start, cold first half of the month. Then, of course, we've seen significant warming taking place here, and to get Marches that are cold right the way through is very, very difficult to do so. And I suppose I did slightly underplay the potential warming during the second half of the month, I suppose. So it may be kind of catching me out a wee bit, the level of warmth that we've seen. But certainly it was a very, very cold first 10 days of the month of March. We've seen the first, I believe it was the first three, maybe 4 mornings of minus 15 or lower during the month of March since 2001. It also appears that London has had the wettest March also since 2001, which is quite interesting as well. And what's interesting is the fact that we have got an upcoming 7 day period of this is off the the ECMWF weeklies, by the way. Brutal cold continuing over Scandinavia, cold across Iceland, cold across the central portion of Europe, slightly warmer than average across the bulk of England, Wales, and Ireland, Northern Ireland, colder than average across Scotland, and warmer than average across Iberia, as you can see here. But into the 7 to 14 day period, what is quite interesting is, and this is off weatherbell.com, by the way, look at this here. So this is the 7 to 10 day period here off the model, and it is indicating that we have got colder than average conditions. So the first period, so this is the 3rd through the 10th of April, and it looks as if we're starting to see that block not only developing potentially up towards Scandinavia, but also retrograding back towards Greenland once again. And if you look at the GFS ensemble, the NAO is negative at the moment, and it looks as if it maintains negative into week 1 of April here. This is no real coincidence based on this tweet here by our good friend down out on the outskirts of the New Forest in Hampshire, James Peacock. Makes mention of the fact that signs are atmospheric anomalies relating to the mid-February sudden stratospheric warming event will propagate down for one more time during the first half of April. So in other words, we're still seeing the hangover from that major sudden stratospheric warming during the middle portion of February. And I did allude here on the channel that the long term effects can linger on. You get the initial major cold shock that is the initial shock wave from the major sudden stratospheric warming, 2 weeks after the event. Then we get these kind of recurring feedback with forcing the storm track further south, high latitude blocking further north and whatnot, and the residual effects of that major sudden stratospheric warming lives on, and it looks as if we do see another period of high latitude blocking, and you can see that here. So we've seen the collapse in heights to the north, in recent times, and that has allowed the warmer conditions to start building into the mid latitude pattern. But it looks as if certainly the GFS, the Northern Angular Mode Index, has the return of blocking. So this, of course, was the major southern stratospheric warming. Then that 2 week lag was seen, of course, the strong blocking at the beginning of the month, which delivered the exceptional cold conditions not seen in the UK since in 20 plus years actually. Then, of course, we've seen the pullback of that blocking, warming conditions across the UK and Europe, and now we're starting to see the return of that taking place. And the ECMWF, the GFS, has been indicating that we start to see cold returning back into the European pattern once again, and that is very, very evident indeed. So it's interesting, with what James is saying versus what we're seeing in terms of the forecast overall, that the cold looks as if it is coming back. But of course, it's late March or early April style cold. It's not what was seen back, at the beginning of the month of March and whatnot. And you can see here the ECMWF tries to have the kind of cold lingering on through the month of April, which is very, very fascinating indeed. And remember what I've said in recent videos, that it looks as if we're starting to develop towards particularly week 2 of April, a drier theme, a more blocky theme. If we look at the latest run of the GFS in terms of just the overview chart, because we've got some interesting things showing up in the models as well. So we are now back in a southwesterly regime. So we've lost the colder conditions. Back on what day was it? Sunday. Off and on snow showers, even the sea level here across northern Scotland here. We also seen snow showers near elsewhere. If we look at the 850 chart here, you can see what it's showing. So this is off the GFS, like I say, and you notice here that we're starting to pull that milder conditions from the southwest up into the British Isles here. The cold that we had over the British Isles is now being pushed into Central and Eastern Europe, as you can see here quite clearly. Area of low pressure moves towards the northwest, strengthening southwesterly winds, and we've got still more rain piling in to the UK as well. So this is going to be a very, very mild or very wet month, of course, indeed. And then we have to keep our eyes very closely fixed on this area of low pressure, this moving in across the southern half of the British Isles. Now, with this latest run of the GFS, the centre of that low is on the south coast of England. So therefore, the strongest winds will be focused over northern France. And that west coast, that Atlantic coast of France, looks as if it could get quite the pattern of strong winds with this area of low pressure. Now, if you notice here, as we play towards the end of the loop, so this is taking us into the early portion of April, so the weekend coming up, and indeed early next week here, you notice that it's starting to see a little bit more warmer air getting lifted north in the form of high pressure. And then we have to keep our eyes focused on the cold over Scandinavia, trying to cut underneath that area of high pressure and into the southern half of the British Isles. Remember what I showed you a couple of days ago as well with the 850, the ECMWF, the GFS ensemble. Remember what I showed you about the 850 temperatures? Actually, slightly less cold at 850 across Inverness, colder across the south. London, Manchester had colder 850 temperatures into the early portion of the month as opposed to Scotland. Why is that the case? Because an area of high pressure containing milder conditions closer to Scotland, and there's that colder air at 850 running underneath the area of high pressure into the southern half of the British Isles here. So an interesting scenario developing here as we go forward. And then, of course, we're seeing that area of high pressure potentially shift over towards the Atlantic and opens the door to more cold coming in from the north and the northeast here. So certainly there is a lot of things going on. Spring is not in full flow by any means. We're getting these little blips, these wee warm surges coming up from the southwest, but the residual effects from that major SSW lives on, and it looks as if the modelling is trying to hold that theme well into the month of April here. But hopefully, what we've seen during the month of December, January, February, these big swings between wet months versus dry months. So wet, of course, the first 2 weeks of January, very dry February, very wet March. Do we see the return to drier than average conditions during the month of April, and indeed colder conditions for the month of April? That remains to be seen. So all to play for. As always, keep it right here on my YouTube channel. If you haven't already done so, do hit that subscribe button. I do, of course, have my ideas now starting to build with regards to the upcoming summer season. El Nino looks as if it's coming on. We've got a global weather and climate report every Sunday looking at the global temperature extremes, looking at climate change, throwing in the debate whether it's CO2 that's driving the warming of the oceans and the atmosphere. So, yeah, keep it right here. Like I say, I appreciate your every view. I appreciate every comment. Do drop a comment below if you can. And they are read, even though I don't necessarily reply to many. I do read them, and they are appreciated. So, thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you again hopefully tomorrow with more. Bye for now.